Hey everyone, welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. I'm Dan Deppen, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Darlene Root. Darlene, how you doing?
Hey, good, Dan. How are you?
Good. So I'm excited to have you on. So we've got a topic I've been meaning to get into more of on the podcast and like haven't quite done yet, which is mindset and some of those other things involved in investing and real estate that aren't necessarily like the mechanics of doing deals. So we're going to get like a little bit deeper on some stuff today, but first maybe talk like a little bit about your background and some of the things you've done in the world of real estate investing.
Yeah, so I got my real estate license in 1979, and I was a 19-year-old kid, still living at home. And up until this past weekend, I did not know the story of how why I got into real estate. I always thought that my parents put my sister up to it because they were afraid I was just going to be a rock star, which is a true story. I wanted to do music. That's all I wanted to do. And I thought my parents didn't think I was that good, so that they convinced my sister to do something with your sister. And we went and got our real estate license. That's not the story. She was here this past weekend with her husband. And she said, no, mom was ticked that I was getting you involved. I said, well, why did you get involved? She said, well, I saw a sign that said, it was sort of a buy one, get one free, pay for your own class and bring a friend along. And she's not going to pass up a good sale. So she
Yeah.
dragged me into it. And my parents were ticked. Well, my mom was, because she didn't think I was particularly bright and that I would fail miserably. So my sister had something to prove to my parents. And so she made me study, and I had no interest in doing it. My designs were on, just being a rock star. And
Mhm.
so she put me up to it. She said, if you fail, you owe me $100. And so in 1979, $100 is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, I'm
A lot
guessing.
of
Yeah.
money for my babysitting job. And so I wound up passing, just passed, and she passed with flying colors. She wasn't particularly, fond of the industry, and I stayed in it. But I transitioned into investing real quick because I didn't want to schlep people around in my car and show them homes. I had this hoopty at the time that
Mhm.
leaked oil. And so my broker owner of the company that I had my license with, he was a real estate developer and um, investor. And I said, I want to do what you do. And he kind of took me under his wing to show me the ropes of investing. And fast forward 45 years later, here I am. So I love the business. I really, like I said, didn't do a lot of listing and selling after the first couple of years. I pretty much have touched everything. I was on a podcast the other day. They said, is there anything in the real estate space you've not done? And the answer is yes. One thing, I haven't done high rises. That was
Nice.
something
Yeah.
I never did. I did commercial, residential, notes, of course, which I love. And yeah, so that's kind of my story. That's where I came from. And now, of course, I coach on mindset, and I'll share my story with your audience in a minute. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's where I am. That's who I am. And that's what I love to do.
Very cool. So you've definitely seen some different market cycles in real estate. So it sounds like you were active during like the 20% interest rate time. So
Yeah. So a week after I got my real estate license, the interest rates went from, I think they were 3%. I believe they went up to 10, like lickety split, boom, 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 boom. They climbed right up there. And then most people don't know we had two recessions in the 1970s. The first
mhm.
one was 1975, and the second one was 1979. I figured we did it so well. Why not we do that again? And so on the heels of that, in 1980, 81, the interest rates went up to a recorded 18 or 15.8%, but I had
Mhm.
seen them as high as 22.5. And so we had to be creative. That's where creative financing came from. We cut our teeth on no one's going to get a mortgage. We did land contracts or contracts for deeds in other states, and wraps and blends and lease with option, and a lot of wholesaling going on then. So it was a great time, and I'm super grateful for that time because that's how I learned. A lot of people right now are freaking out a little bit because the market might be correcting again. Don't you like that politically
Mhm.
correct
Yeah.
correcting? And because I have gone through so many cycles and so many corrections, it doesn't scare me at all. I'm bring it. You do have to have a mindset for that.
Yeah, because like from my perspective, right, like the last several years, like my brain is very acclimated to like 3%
Yeah.
interest rates, and I'm like been very focused on low interest rates like the last 20 years or whatever. So when they go from 3 to like 7 or 8 or whatever it is, it feels really dramatic. But yeah, in historical terms, it's not that high, really.
No, and that's perspective. And I'm glad you said that, Dan, because everything is perspective. Yes, back in the early 70s, interest rates were low. There was not a lot going on, but there were depressions and recessions prior to that. We are going in, or coming out of a market cycle all the time. You're either in it, going in it, or just coming out to go back in. So shift happens, and you just have to be able to posture yourself or position yourself and future cast. Most people see what's right here.
Mhm.
And we've ridden that gravy train for a long time. And what goes up must come down. Got to balance out the universe, right? So if your audience, your students have only been in the game for the last 10 years, they've ridden that high. Now it's time to pivot, change your mindset, figure out what you're going to do. I'm not saying there's going to be a crash, but when it corrects, when there's a serious correction and the interest rates go up, this is not the time to abandon ship. Warren Buffett said, when people are panicking, I'm buying. And when I'm buying, people are panicking. So you have to know and pivot, but mindset over strategy every single time. There's tons of strategies out there. Half the stuff you can get on YouTube, in an ebook, or even in a book. But if you don't have that person walking alongside you to actually implement those strategies, it's not going to go well. That's why we have coaches. I was asked yesterday on a podcast, do you have how many coaches do you have? And I said, well, I have a fitness coach, I have a health coach, I have a wealth coach, and I was going to say I need a cooking coach, but I would just rather have a chef. So and I have a coach who coaches me on coaching. So you need a coach pretty much for everything. You don't get a relationship coach to teach you how to buy notes. You get
Mhm.
a coach. Same thing with mindset. You can get some stuff out of a book, but for the most part, the 95% of what you believe isn't going to come from a book. You have a 95% of your subconscious is driving the bus.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because just last night I did a private webinar for some of the Note Launchpad students. It was just a small group. And I had a slide in there where I was showing a bunch of the coaching programs that I've done over the last 5 years, not necessarily related to real estate. Like right now, I've only got one, which is a business coach. But yeah, I had on there someone I was working with on fitness and nutrition and just all kinds of different things. And I was showing the results that I've gotten out of them. And all those things haven't necessarily been cheap, but like I accomplished a lot with them. So
You know what? Cheap refers to inferior product, inexpensive. And I do agree it's not inexpensive to do that, but it's an investment in doing it the right way the first time. And I was sharing this story the other day. My very first real estate investing coaching experience was with my then mentor. He had a different way of teaching. And I said, Nova, his name was Nova, I want to
mhm.
learn how to rehab houses. This is what you do. He taught me how to, what goes where. And he said, good, you're going to start on Saturday. This was on a Thursday or Friday. And he said, you're going to tear down that house right there. Now we were on a main street, the office, and there were 3 other houses on that acre. And he said, you're going to tear down that house. So I said, what house? And he pointed. That is not coaching. And I said, well, what do I do then? And he said, you're just going to lay all the stuff, and then we'll get a dumpster and take it away. And so I said, well, how much are you going to pay me? And he said, now I'm a kid. He said, case of beer. And how many? No, that when you're
Yeah.
19, you'll take the case of beer. And so I had a bunch of friends, my boyfriend at the time, come on over and we're going to tear this house down. Well, we didn't know what we're doing. Started tearing off shingles and throwing rocks through the window. We had no clue, tearing off siding, and something didn't feel just right. And I said, hang on, guys. And I peeked in the window and there was a coat hanging on the back of a chair, dishes, piled up to be washed. And I'm going, oh no,
You get the wrong house.
Not good. It was the wrong house. Now we advanced. So police pull up, we're on a main street. Somebody called it in. Police pull up and, get down, hands over your head. And I said, no, no, no. All 5'4" of me going, no, you don't seem to understand. We were told to tear this house down. And he said, by who? And I said, the owner. And he said, who's the owner? And I said, Nova Catalano. And just as I said that, Nova pulls up in his Cadillac and the owners of the house, and it is mass chaos. And so now I'm crying. Well, he wound up having to fix everything, repair the entire house. And I said, Nova, in tears in my eyes, and all my friends bailed. You told me to tear down that house. He said, no. And he leans me over and he goes, that house. I go, oh yeah, that one we could have done. It was this wood shack that all we needed to do was just pile up the wood. So I learned from that. It's terrific to be specific, and just pointing and shooting is not coaching. And that's what akin reading something in a book or watching something on YouTube. You may learn about how to rehab, but unless you have a mentor walking beside you and saying, this is how you actually tear it down. Well, this is the house you should be tearing down. Then that isn't worth the paper it's written on. Had I paid for coaching, which I did later on, I went to a different mentor. That was well worth the investment, because you're going to do it. They're going to walk alongside you. The difference between a coach and a mentor is a coach is going to coach you once you've learned. A mentor is going to walk alongside you. And that's what I do with my students, is I walk alongside them in the mindset piece and tweak it as they go.
And like, as we were talking about earlier, right, like market conditions and things change over time. So it's important to understand why you're doing something rather than follow a script or a template, right? Because any script is going to become out of date before too long. It's not
absolutely. Who was it that used to be Tommy Hopkins? I don't know if you're
I don't know him.
Yeah, one of the first sales coaches out there. And then it didn't sound cheesy, but now when you go and listen to that material, they're like, oh no, I would never say that now, because our ears have tuned in a different way. And so, yeah, what worked even a couple of years ago is antiquated now. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do people learn not just like a script or something, but how do they get to like a more, I don't know if you want to call it like how do they get their mindset right where they'll be able to adjust over time?
Yeah. So a lot of people get into this business. I know very few people get up, as a 10-year-old kid, and want to be a real estate investor. They want to be a cop, a fireman, teacher.
Astronaut. Yeah.
Astronaut. That's another one. Superman. So a lot of people who get in this business get in because they're disenchanted with their job. They're resenting their boss. They're resenting having to punch a clock. They see on social media all these really great real estate investors holding up big checks and driving Lamborghinis and popping bottles, on a boat. And you and I know that that's all dog and pony, smoke and mirrors. So when they get into the business, they want to replicate and fast track like the person who is purportedly doing well. And I tell people, yeah, I became an overnight success. It took me 45 years to get here. It's not an overnight process, and you're constantly evolving. But they get in because they don't like their boss. They see you can make big money. They quit their job, and now it's showtime. And they go to get on the phone and they use a script that is just not them. They have a fear of the phone, and they just don't get on the phone. Because it's just
especially younger folks. Like
absolutely.
I have teenagers and they don't like to talk on the phone.
No. But if you're selling, this is in real estate and even notes, if you're selling your most expensive investment, are you going to do that via a text? No, generally not. Unless you're
Mhm.
dealing with a frustrated landlord and you're like, hey, I'm going to shoot you an offer. But mom and pop who are, the D's, the death, the divorce, the dismemberment, which means sickness, and losing dollars, they want to have a real conversation. My age group, so we have different generations. I'm used to negotiating over the phone. Older generations definitely won't do anything through mail. A lot of people are doing the checks by mail thing, sign here.
Mhm.
No, they want to have a real conversation. So a lot of people that get into the business, they're hiding behind social media and buying lists and then mailing to the list. And not that any of those are bad. Mailing to lists, I've done them. But when the phone rings, you have to be in a position to not want to get. You got to give. And it's a slower process than people may think. So now they're thrust into this business. They made 10 phone calls. This isn't going to work, but they don't want to go back to their job. They have to save face in front of their friends. But they got into the business using the wrong part of their brain, and that is the amygdala. The amygdala is your brain is not wired for success at all. It's not wired to make you happy. People, I just want to be happy. No, that's not why your brain is there, at least this part of the brain. The
Mhm.
brain that I'm talking about, the part of the brain is called the amygdala. And that amygdala is your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's the part of the brain that when a bear runs into the room, you're either going to run out of there, you're going to fight that bear, you're going to freeze and go, oh no, or you're going to roll over and acquiesce. You
So
got me.
some people call that like the lizard part
Yes, the
of the
lizard brain.
brain.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. So then it moves up from well, they get in because of the greed factor. And the greed
Mhm.
factor is your limbic brain. It's the hippocampus, which I call your happy camper brain, because they see visions of grandeur. Everybody's doing it and they're making a lot of money and they're have a trophy wife or husband. And so you get just the vision, and that's where vision boards and affirmations come from. People do
Mhm.
their affirmations, their vision boards, and they say it in front of the mirror and they go to the theater of their mind and they've read all of the books on how to do a vision board. And the vision board, those those tools do work. People do them in the wrong part of the brain. So I'm going to show you the part of the brain that you actually can do it and be successful at it.
Mhm.
We get into something because we see the fantasy. We're polarized as to what it can give us, all the things that we want. But what we don't see is all the work that we need to do. And I'm going to use polarity here. So we're excited about getting in the business, but then we don't see the other side, the things that are not so exciting that we need to do. And so when we become overly polarized, we're blind to the downside. So the way I teach it is you have to have a mission, then a vision. Now, a mission is in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that has no emotion. It's very governed. It's the executive center of the brain. And so when you write out your mission, it is probably more giving part. So my mission is teaching, speaking, and coaching mindset so people can be inspired and empowered in all endeavors of life, but mainly business. The vision for that is I get to travel and do that. That's the fun part. I get to live in, elevated experiences because I've worked for it. So then you go mission, then you go vision, and then you set your goals around that. People think the goal is to do 100 notes this year. That's not the goal. The mission is financial freedom. The vision is I get to have a lot of cool stuff because of it. The goal is in order for me to fulfill all of that, what do I need to do? And your purpose is the daily actions for your goals to get to your vision, to get to your mission. So when you stack it like that, a lot of people probably would not leave their job straight away. I always tell people don't leave your current job until your hobby is paying you equal to or greater than your current job. So
Mhm.
leaving the job is the vision, the fantasy. The mission is to have financial freedom and possibly notes or alternative investments to go with that.
Right. That's an interesting way to break it down, because I know like I've done like goal planning for the last like 20 years or so. And the way that I've done it, I feel like I've changed it up somewhat like every year, but I know like when the way you broke it down was interesting. Because I know one thing I've done in the past is I set goals almost like randomly at the beginning of the year, not necessarily attached to those other things. And then you get busy and preoccupied with other things. You didn't do them and they didn't necessarily map to what it was that I really was going after.
Yeah. So the reason for that is because you're setting goals that are usually fantasies. I say goal setting is usually fantasy setting unless it ties into a mission where there's a vision. So New Year's Eve is that, let's do our New Year's resolutions. And this is why it doesn't work. They're done as fantasies. I'm going to lose 40 pounds and I'm going to have, this wonderful relationship and I'm going to do 100 deals this year. That is delusional. That is emotion, because you get a lot of emotion on that, right? I'm excited. I got all these pictures of, me skiing and behind a boat and on down a slope. Those aren't goals. Those are fantasies. That's what you're going to get as a result of fulfilling your mission. So in order to not create fantasies, you have to use the executive center of the brain, which is totally balanced and it's not emotional. So when you set out a mission, yours right now is notes and coaching notes. So people can be empowered and inspired to develop financial freedom, for themselves and their families, to live elevated lives and have great experiences. That is a great mission with a vision wrapped in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the goal is, in order for me to have a robust note business, what do I need to do? Because I do them 10 years out. Actually take my students through a 200-year goal setting. And that really gets you out of the picture, because it's really about the ripple effect of what you're going to do. You want to really get into a mission mind.
Yeah.
What is that going to do 200 years from now? But for most people, 20 years out or 10 years, and then you work it backwards, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, right, all the way down year one. And then you do the 9-month, 6-month, 3-month, 2-week. What am I going to do in this week, next week to meet or achieve my mission? That way you don't go on, I'm going to do $1 million this year. Well, have you made $10,000 doing this, guys?
Yeah, and I'm curious, so you're talking about planning 10 years out. And I'm curious how much pushback you get on that. And where I'm coming from is like I've had a lot of discussions with people where they're kind of in that boat. They're like, I don't like my W-2, I want to leave like in 6 months, a year. And I don't have like a credible solution for how to do that, at least with notes.
Yeah.
Right. But however, and I've been studying this more, like if your time horizon, it's funny you say 10 years, because I've used 10 years and I've shown like examples where you can build, replace retirement over 10 years with partials and other things. And I'm like, if you're trying to do it in the really short term, it's like not impossible, but damn hard. But as you move the horizon out, like if you're actually able to set the 10-year horizon, it's actually like very easy to do. But a lot of times, people I talk to, they gag. They're like, 10 years, like, I don't know, I might be dead then. I'm not, even if they're not that old, like that feels like a million years away. So I'm kind of curious, like how you help people kind of accept that or think in those terms.
Yeah. Can I tell you a secret?
Sure. It's between us and everybody listening, but yeah.
Between me, you, and the fence post. Once you find out what your financial independence number is, because I take the students through this whole process, they do not know their FIN. Financial freedom, by the way, is an illusion. We want freedom because we resent our current position. But freedom, on the opposite end of freedom, is being trapped. It's the polarity. Everything I do is done with polarity to balance out the nervous system. That's what rewiring is. All you're doing is balancing out the not perspective, but the your perceptions. And so I'll go into that in a little bit. But when I ask a student, what is your financial independence number? Everybody wants to retire next year, right? We want to have cash flow, passive. There's nothing passive. I'm going to shatter that illusion right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I have a section in one of my courses about why passive income is a lie. So yeah, we're definitely on the same page on that one.
Yeah, it's active passive. You still have to manage your portfolio. It's not set it and forget it. If you were to ask Warren Buffett, is his cash flow, his income passive? And he will tell you, no, it is not. You still have to babysit. You still have to, even if it's managed by somebody else, you have to manage the manager, period. When I had rental real estate and I had a manager, I had to manage the manager, even with notes. We have servicers, you still have to manage.
And you have to stay on them.
You absolutely do.
This week, I've been going through some stuff with one of them, and yeah, it's not as passive as it should be.
It's not. So when I say, what is your financial independence number? You want to retire in 20 years. What is that number that you need to have in order for you to do that?
And that number is like an amount of money you need sitting, or
yeah, it's an amount of money from today that you need to have achieved in that 20-year plan. And 20 years is usually for our audience. You know, they want to retire next week, but that's because they resent what they're doing. And I have that for that. So if you want to retire 20 years from now, what is your FIN? What is your financial independence number? No one comes to the party with that number. Most people don't. I did not know mine. Now, of course, I learned it years ago from a mentor. So I know if anybody wakes me up in the middle of the night, they say, Dar, what is your FIN? I can give them the answer of my FIN and the date that I'll never retire. I'm not going to, I love what I do. The date that I could actually retire. Most people can't answer it. Most people can't answer their financial identity number, or their survival number is what I call it. Do you really know what your burn rate is? Do you really know what you're actually spending on a daily? Well, it's only a Starbucks. I saw you drinking Starbucks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's only a $10 latte. And then the little foxes spoil the vine. And I'm not about, scrimping and being in fear about spending money. Quite the contrary. I'm not. You factor that in to your survival number and your financial independence number. So when I take them through that, they're excited to do their 20-year goal because they know. I've had grown men cry when I've taken them through it, literally. Like, I'm 40 and there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. Crunch time. So that's why I do it. Once you know your FIN, I do it 10 years out, 20 years out for some students, and I work the math backwards. Then they can apply their mission because they know their daily. They know what their FIN is, and it's not hard to set that goal. They're not living 20 years from now. They know what it needs to be. And I have them factor in inflation. Yeah. Most people don't use the inflation. They use the rule of 72 and all that, but you do have to put an algorithm in for inflation.
Well, yeah, that's going to make a big difference, especially over 20 years. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't use Social Security in my model. If you get Social Security, depending on where you are in your age group, that's going to be a bonus. I don't factor in Social Security. It's just that number. No one can retire on it now. It's an illusion. If you get it, good. That's lunch money, but don't factor that into your overall plan. So when you look at that, today I need to do X. That's your goal to get to your mission so you can fulfill your vision. And so that is a huge part of what I teach, because otherwise you're shooting fish in a barrel. You have no idea what your number is. You're just willy-nilly. And that's why people don't do goals. They set fantasies, and when they don't do it, they set that higher next year. Do you ever notice that?
Yeah.
I'm going to make 100 grand this year. And then, but they've never even made 50. So already they're setting themselves up, because you cannot transcend what you have not managed. If you can't manage 50, you're not going to get 100.
Yeah.
So if you've made 50, the brain can only think in 10% increments. That's how we're wired.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that.
10% increments.
Yeah, so our brain and our nervous system can only process in 10% increases. It's just
Okay.
wired that way. And here's why. If you would implode, your brain would go, your nervous system would go, whoa, and you would not be able to manage that. So you can't transcend what you have not managed. Most people, I'd say most people can't manage silent prayer, let alone managing, say your number is 50 grand. You've never made more than $50,000 a year. If you tell your brain to go and make 100, now you're doubling it, your brain can't, it doesn't compute because you haven't managed what's down here. Your brain won't allow you to transcend that. It's just, your
It's
nervous,
too big a leap.
it's too big of a leap. Now, because you're doing it out of fear and out of fantasy. Now, if it was in your executive center of your brain, and once you've done that and you've managed that, can you quantum that? Absolutely. But that's not done in the happy camper part of your brain or in your fear part of the brain. You know you're in fear when you're, I have to do this, I got to do this, I need to do this. You know you're in survival. You pushed, pulled the trigger and you got into the business and now it's crunch time and you're throwing it up against the wall to make it stick. It's not a business plan. If you,
Yeah.
you know that, and I've done it, I'm going, oh no, I'm really behind the eight ball. When you're doing that, your sympathetic nervous system and your brain think that you're being chased by a bear. It goes into that type of response.
I did that. Maybe I'll talk about it on another podcast, but I had about a 6, 9 month period of my life where I was like that too. And I went to an integrative health doctor and she
Oh,
was like, yeah, you're, what'd she say? You're, now I can't remember the term, but basically like my system was like fried. And
right.
yeah, I was doing that. I was like trying to do a lot of stuff all at once and it wasn't working well.
The hurrier I go, the behinder I get. And what is going on in your nervous system and your body is, that's why most employees, I think even entrepreneurs, they die on a Monday of a heart attack. Why? They're dreading going to work because they're burnt out. And that is a for real statistic that they just can't face another day and they implode. That's because they're using their nervous system and their brain incorrectly. We get into things because of the fantasy. We think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We think our belief system is what's keeping us stuck, and that is true. But it's the hidden beliefs that's 90 to 95% of what we believe is in the subconscious. So we have the conscious brain. We're using that now to have a conversation.
Mhm.
And we believe certain things because we've been talking about it. 90 to 95% of what we really believe is what's driving the bus. And we have no idea what those beliefs are. Now I have a system that goes in and uncovers those beliefs and then we rewire them. And then once you transcend them, your nervous system and your brain are governed. So if 95, and then we have the super conscious that makes our heart beat and our lungs breathe. And then there's the collective consciousness. So a lot of people don't even know what they believe. So when you're in the womb, so at conception, you have the beliefs of your mom and the beliefs of your dad because of their DNA, right? So
Mhm.
while you're in the womb, mom's having a conversation because everything she's saying, you're hearing, and everything your dad is saying, if the father is in the home, is going in. So you come out with a set of beliefs that are not your own. Then, depending on the sibling order, I'm the third daughter. Then you take on the beliefs of the people before you. And then you get your little friends. And all of this is between the age of 0 and 6. Most of what you believe happened then. Then you go to school, your teacher, you get the education beliefs. Then you go to work and you get your boss's beliefs and your coworkers' beliefs. Not only do you, then you go off to a religion, if that's indeed what people do. Now you have religious beliefs, and then you have political beliefs. So I always say no one has an original thought of their own because we're a conglomerate of different people's beliefs. And so that is why when we do something that, like, why did I do that? That's that hidden belief that you have. Why can't I get on the phone?
Mhm.
Why am I procrastinating? Why am I stuck? It's all the inner dialogue that you're not hearing, but is showing up as soon as you go do something. So in order to transcend that, you have to rewire it, but you have to figure out what they are first.
Very interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a much better process than thinking of a novelty goal that you think will look cool to your friends or on Instagram and then just doing what you always do.
Well, yeah, and people say, fear. I love the false evidence appearing real. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I've
that.
heard that. Yeah,
Yeah. The other one is make a goal so big it scares you.
yeah.
What did you tell your nervous system? Be in fear. BHAG, big, hairy,
Okay.
audacious goal. I'm keeping it clean.
Yeah.
Um, 10x your goals. You cannot 10x. We just talked about it. Your brain cannot 10x anything.
Yeah, and around that time, so I went through the 10X book a few years ago, and I took that to heart like for a little bit, and it did not work for me
No, your
at
brain
all.
no, your brain's like, hold my beer. That's not going to happen. Now,
Yeah.
there is a way to do the executive center of your brain, but you have to know your fin and you have to do the math backwards and you have to get governed and rewire the hidden beliefs that you have. Can it be done? Yes, people have done it. Have people burnt themselves out and gotten sick over it? Absolutely. That's why you have to use the correct part of the brain. So the BHAG, the 10X, do the uncomfortable thing, take the uncomfortable action. Just hold your brain, bear, run, freeze, fight, curl up, and roll over, fawn. That is not the way to get a coaching student to take action. You have to
Yeah.
find out why that student has a fear of getting on the phone or why they constantly sabotage their success. I'll give you a quick story on that. Being in the business for going into my 45th year, I had pretty good success, along the way. And I would lose a little bit of money and then I would make a little bit of money. And it seemed like the stakes were getting a little higher and that this is not good.
Yeah.
If life is like a ruler, I'm on this end of the ruler, guys. I don't have a lot of time to make that up. So this is before I knew the rewire work. This is actually why I was introduced and why I do what I do. I rolled the dice, pretty heavy dice, on a large real estate resort development I knew
Mhm.
nothing about. And so key here, if you don't know what you're doing and it sounds too good to be true, don't do it. Get more information. Now, I did vet the developer, and anyone can look at an online resume, and it made him look like he was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. That's as far as I vetted it. Did I go and call the other, partners that he did developments with? No. Did I find out if they really knocked it out of the park? No.
Mhm.
What how I got in it was my fantasy part of my brain saw this big chunk of money at the end of the rainbow, and I rolled the dice, as did some friends of mine, colleagues of mine. And everything went swimmingly until it didn't. And we realized that not only was all the money gone, and that this whole project was supposed to be under 2 million and take 18 months. It was a motor coach resort. All you need to do was put in the underground and some slabs and you call it a day.
Mhm.
Well, the developer started just visions of, we're going to have this huge clubhouse and parties and this whole thing. And it had tentacles all of its own. And when it was all said and done and the money was gone, we realized we were 3.2 million under budget, that we needed to raise $3.2 million to do this resort. They all panicked. They got a bridge loan that we
Uh-huh.
knew they couldn't pay back because now they're in what part of their brain? Their amygdala.
Mhm.
Crap. We need to get this thing done. Need to. And they still saw the visions of grandeur. Had they sat down in their executive center of their brain to do the math and calculate it, they probably wouldn't have borrowed more money. And by the way, that this thing fell apart and I lost all the money. And I
Mhm.
had guilt because my colleagues lost money. And so I had shame about that. And then I had fear to ever invest again. And I fell into a depression, and a fellow colleague of mine introduced me to her then mentor, my then mentor, and taught me how to rewire that trauma, because it was true trauma,
Yeah.
how to rewire that trauma. And when I went through the process, I not only was super grateful that it happened, I was grateful for that developer screwing us over. I was grateful that I lost the money. I don't look at it as a loss. I look at it like I invested a whole lot of money in a coaching program.
Yeah.
that,
An expensive coaching
that
program,
was an
sounds like. Yeah.
expensive, that was called the School of Hard Knocks. And that is why I do what I do now. It healed me pretty instantaneous. And I said, if I can do this, if he can do this for me and I can do this for other people, that is now my lifelong mission. I do investing, but my mission is to have people rewired and healed and have them use the correct part of their brains to get out of the hustle, the grind, the chaos, being stuck and depressed. And it's just been so much fun. I love doing what I do.
Well, that's a cool story. Thanks for sharing that, because it's
Yeah.
interesting how many people I've talked to who are highly successful, but at some point they've had a major calamity. Like I've talked to, I don't know how many people that like were doing great and the financial crisis hit like 07, 08, and they ended up filing bankruptcy, or they managed to avoid that, but they just got crushed and then built it all the way back
Yep.
and then some afterwards. So thankfully I haven't found myself in one of those spots yet, but I kind of keep that in the back of my mind. Okay, if I ever do, a lot of people have been there and then dug out of that and then done even better
Yeah, because you don't know what's
afterwards.
around the corner and you don't know what's going on with the rest of their life. So I'm glad you touched on that, Dan. We're seeing the Lambos, we're seeing the boats, we're seeing those big fat checks, we're seeing, life is good. But what's going on in their health? What's going on in their family? We don't see that part. We only see the teaser reel called social media, or the sizzle reel, I should say, that shows everything is wine and roses. They're hustling, they're grinding, they're working 40, 80, 60 hours a week. Their family's suffering and their health is suffering. And a lot of students that I get, they're making money, but their family life is a mess. And they have all kinds of health issues. That's not balance. That's not wealth. Wealth is the whole thing. Health, money, relationships. That's the definite wheel. The wholeness of all is really what wealth is. We get focused on the money because we lack the money, and we have this fear that we're going to outlive our money. And so we're hustle, 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 hustle. Meanwhile, the wife and kids, or the husband and the kids, are going, come on, you're not going on vacations, you got to work. So don't look at the smoke and mirrors part of that. And to your point, you're waiting, almost like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop because you've done well. Don't look for that either. But understand, I always say, and I think this is a Warren Buffett, maybe not. If you're closing all your deals and you're making money on all your deals, you're not writing enough of them. There is that law, right? What goes up must go down. Polarity. Everything is polarity. The universe is constantly in chaos. Chaos theory, if anybody is into chaos theory and string theory and quantum, I am a geek and I am into that. But everything is done on polarity. So what goes up must come down. But does it have to come down in a big old crash? No, just don't get elated about the up. Build and factor in the down. What are you going to do? What's your reserves? What's your burn rate? What are you spending per month? And can you absorb a loss? So when I take my students through their 20-year goal and they know what their fin number is, I also have them do now I might be fanatical about it, but you have to have a pretty robust reserve. It used to be 3 months. You better have 3 months emergency money in the
I
bank.
would not be okay with that. I've got a much larger reserve than that.
I have a little over a year reserve. I don't touch it. It's in a passive. I can get the cash out pretty darn quick if I need it, because you don't know when or if we're going to have a 2008.
Yeah, the way that I do it, and I actually track this every month, like I keep track of like how much cash I have on hand, and then like how many months of burn. Like if just for some reason my income went to zero, which shouldn't happen, but if it did, And then
Sure.
I look at like the liquid assets. Okay, for some reason I went beyond that. Like what could I easily, like within a couple days, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ultra
Before you're selling off the
conservative.
kids, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have to do that. Yeah, I don't. But
You
like
have to have a plan.
but
You,
yeah, I had a conversation with an entrepreneur I'm in this little mastermind group with just last week, and he's kind of location independent American guy, but living in Mexico, and he had a kind of a downturn in his business, and he's like, yeah, it's like down to about 2 months of cash, things aren't working out. Maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do that. I'm like, dude, I would not be that chill if I was in that position
trust me, he's
right
not that
now.
chill. Now he is in that part of the brain that is fired up when they see a bear. It's no different. It's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, heart rate goes up, muscles tense up, blood pressure goes up. Living in that kind of chaos is gonna burn you out. Guaranteed, you cannot live like that. That is why when I do that, because you asked about the resistance to doing 10-year goals, people
Yeah.
are chomping at the bit. Let's do 20 because they want to know, look, if you're going to go from here to, California, well, you're in California, aren't you?
Colorado.
Colorado, that's right.
Yeah.
If I wanted to go from Naples, Florida to San Diego, California, I'm not going to just get in the car and go and think it's going to take me 20 minutes to get there. When your kids are little, are we there yet?
Oh
How
yeah.
many more miles?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have no relationship to time or space. That's such a perfect place to be. Uh, so if I'm going to leave from here and I'm going to go to California, I need to know how long is it going to take to get there by car if I'm driving. How many times do I have to stop? Because I don't like to drive all day. How much gas, how much lodging? You have to plan that out. And then you get in the car, make sure your tires are inflated and you have oil. All of that, because I had a mission to get to San Diego. I had a vision how fun it's going to be. I had a goal that's well defined. Like I'm going to go get gas and then I'm going to map it out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay at, I have a standard of where I'm going to stay. And then I have a purpose. My purpose for that moment right now is to go get gas in the car. So your purpose is the little micro parts of the goal to get you to your mission so you can achieve your vision. And most people don't do that. They take more time to plan a vacation than they do for their financial independence. And that is statistic. I think it's less than 33% have enough savings in their bank account to survive 2 months.
It's scary. And like anybody that invests in notes, especially like a lot of the land contracts I do, yeah, the level of financial literacy out there sometimes is kind of scary. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
but
really kind of scary and good for you. I mean, you're raising up students who understand, look, your job isn't going to give you wealth. I don't care if you have a pension or not. That's not wealth because that could go away at any given time. There isn't a thing called security. Certainly, when you go through the different parts of the brain, you go through security first. You want to make sure you secure your assets. Do you have the right amount of insurance, whether it's health, um, car insurance, homeowners insurance? You want to make sure you do that if you have a big business. You want to have key man insurance for people that really bring a lot to the party in your business. You want to make sure they're
mhm.
insured. If they drop dead, what are you going to do? They're gone. So that security component, and then you want to have a little bit of protection. That's when you're starting to put enough away in investments and nest eggs. And then you go into the wealth building, the advanced strategies. Can't put the cart before the horse. Your brain isn't operating like that. Your brain wouldn't even get it at all because we're so knee-jerk reaction, or we're so happy camper that we don't use our executive center of the brain very often. And that is where everything comes to fruition. So on the off chance we get there every now and then, we serve it up. When you do a vision board and an affirmation using that part without emotion, and your vision board or your affirmations are directly related to your mission, that's when you know you've done it right. You can't tell your brain, I'm a millionaire, when you have the identity of being a thousandaire. It's
Yeah.
going to go BS. And you know that we do all these affirmations that I'm a supermodel or whatever. I'm 20 pounds lighter, name your weight, and you're eating Cheetos. Your brain is going to go, no, no, you're not. But when you
Yeah.
plan for it and you have a strategy to get there, it does happen faster because you can quantum exit. You can. But most courses teach you just do these affirmations and be disciplined. And if you're procrastinating, you're lazy. There is no such thing as being lazy. Not a single person, not even a homeless person, because I know your audience is going to go, wait a minute, what about the homeless guy? We
Mhm.
only do things that are in our highest values. There are 7 of them, and I take my students through a value assessment. We do it according to our highest values and our identity. And you have daughters and go clean your room. It's not in their highest value. They're not going to do it. They're going
Right.
to play video games or go visit with their friends because they're social. Now, there are hacks that you can do. And I saw one of them just walk by. So I'll do
Oh
this.
yeah. Yeah.
Walks back in the
We were
room.
having a snow day here in Colorado.
Yay.
So it's
And I'm having an
yeah.
86-degree day here.
Yeah.
When you have a child who is resistant to doing what you want them to do, all you have to do is learn what their highest values are and speak to that highest value and have them link what they don't want to do into their highest value. It'll get done.
Yeah, I've never done this, but I think all I would have to do is just unplug the cable modem and take down the Wi-Fi and say I'll put it back up when the room is clean. It would be done in like 5 minutes.
But that breeds resentment. So now they
No, I
resent
know.
you
That's
until
why
you
I
can
haven't, I'm not
defiant.
gonna go do that, but yeah.
That
Cool.
is
Well,
a strategy. But I was telling an audience yesterday, something about folding clothes is not my thing. I don't like it. And so I have my 3 highest values are speaking, teaching, coaching, doing events. The second one is research, learning, so I can add more value to my audience. And the third one is health and fitness.
mhm.
So if I have to do something that I clearly is not in my highest value, I'm going to procrastinate. It's not that I have fear of laundry. It's nothing like that. I just don't want to do it. I will tie doing laundry into my highest value of learning. So while I'm folding clothes or doing laundry or whatever it is I'm doing, I don't want to do, I turn on some YouTube, listen to your podcast. I learn while I'm doing something that I don't want to do because I tied it in my highest value. And that's a way to get a family to do something or coworkers to do something where they just clearly, Johnny, go mow the lawn, and they're like not having it. They want to play, video games. Then you link, instead of discipline, you link why it's a good idea to mow the lawn without doing a huge reward thing by linking it to their highest value, which if they're playing video games, it's creative. That's a creative bent for them. So
Yeah.
tie that in, and I teach people how to do that so they can not manipulate, but they can speak to somebody else in their highest values. That way they're not subordinating. They don't feel like they're subordinating to you. And you're not
Mhm.
subordinating to them. You're not like, oh, just never mind, just go ahead. You're meeting each other where you need to meet them. So spouses have opposite values usually.
Mhm.
Usually the man is about business and making money, and the woman is about family. And I've seen that in the work that I do. Their highest value is family, nurturing their children, making a beautiful home. And their counterpart, speaking in heterosexual relationships, the man is go to work and make the money. That's how you guys are wired. Now I've
Mhm.
seen it flip flop. So
Yeah.
the woman is going, you're never home. You're never here to play with the kids. You don't date me anymore. And you're like, I'm providing for the family. What the heck? I'm doing everything that I can do.
Yeah.
You're living in your highest value, and so is she. So when you speak to their highest value, that me providing an income will be able to afford to go on a vacation, take a winter day off and go and
Yeah.
ski or whatever it is you're going to do. You've spoken to her highest value, she understands yours, and that's where you have the polarity, the polarity meets. Business, family, usually on the opposite end of the spectrum. When you can bring it into the center to where there's no one subordinating to the other, but there's an
Yeah.
understanding and you have gratitude for that, that's you won the game.
Wow. Very cool. So,
Yeah.
well, Darlene, like, thanks so much for joining. I'll put links to all your stuff in the descriptions and show
Okay.
notes and whatnot, but like, how can people find you if they want to learn more or, potentially work with you?
Yeah, so I can be found at darleneroot.com. And incidentally, I'd love to offer this out to your group, your student base, your audience.
Mhm.
I'm going to be doing an event at the end of April. So what did I say? The 27th and 28th. It's a
Is
Friday.
that
No, it's
April or March? Sorry.
at the end of March or April.
Or at the end of April. Okay.
End of April. Yeah. And it's a 2-day event. It's virtual, so you don't need to hop on a plane. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. And I'll be walking everyone through this process. You'll know your PIN number by the end. We're going to uncover some of your hidden beliefs around success and money. And when we do that, we'll actually do a live rewire for the folks that are attending. It's going to be a small group because, any more than 20, it becomes unmanageable. So if you don't make this one, you can certainly do the next one. But you can get that information at darleneroot.com or email me, darlene@darleneroot.com.
Cool. And I'll put all that in the descriptions and show notes as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be great.
So thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, Dan, I had a ball, and thank you to your wonderful audience for tuning in and learning how to get rewired.
All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you.